White. We just lost someone. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board in a matter that is not on the agenda or that is on the consent agenda? We'll recess until we have the quorum. Next item is approval of the agenda.
Under board reports, I'd like to add a report on a meeting with the City of Edina.
Okay, and I'll add executive committee to the president's report, and I had a meeting in Minnetrista. I can add that as well. Anything else for the agenda?
I don't know that I gave me an update from the last Minneapolis Park Board golf course.
We'll add that.
Thank you.
Any other items or changes? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
All microphones should be on. There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. We have a guest here, Mr. Gabriel Jabbour, invited to speak to us about the symposium that he's recently participated in and about boat manufacture. So if you want to come to a microphone, either the standing microphone or the one at the desk, we'd love to hear.
I think I'll sit down this time.
Certainly. I believe that needs to be turned on, that microphone.
It's red.
It's red. If it's red.
It
When
should,
it turns green,
it should be
broadcasting.
green.
There we go.
You're on.
If you'll give us your name and address, then we'd love to hear about the symposium.
Okay, my name is Gabriel Jabbour, 985 Tonkava Road, Owner, Minnesota. And as Madam Chair, member of the board, as you recall, about a few weeks ago, we reported to you that they're about to have a symposium in Vegas where a variety of parties who manufacture boats and boat parts and boat trailers will assemble with a variety of people who are interested, from U.S. government officials to DNR to your own. Bill Olson was there, and to talk about redesigning and remanufacturing boats in a way that it's more sensitive to AIS, and most likely less likely, that's bad English, more likely not to be able to transport AIS from one body of water to the other body of water. And it took us a while to get everybody to agree to do that, and ABYC, which is the authority that writes standards for boat building, decided to host it, and was sponsored by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Minnesota DNR, Tonka Bay Marina, and National Marine Manufacturer Association. Well, after many, many months, it was decided that it will be in Las Vegas, where it's strategically located between a variety of states, and we went to it. And I was somehow apprehensive that lots of people are going to be coming to tell us that they know how to make boats and life will continue. The exact opposite, I believe, happened. It seems to me like 100% of the people who attended were genuinely concerned and anxiously wanting to participate in a solution. I was equally as surprised. There were some people never heard what the word AIS is and totally never heard of it. and a couple manufacturer from England that makes parts started thinking this is a great opportunity for them to excel in a certain fields and what have you, and it was a great chance for all of us to cross-pollinate ideas and bring in a variety of point of view, and was narrated and supervised by ABYC and their president. And he made it perfectly clear to all of us that whatever hat we're wearing, it has to stay at the door, and we should, you know, think about the betterment of the resources in the United States and the permanency of our sports or our hobbies, our boats, and evolve in the future. And even the most, if I dare to say, militant part of the country, which is western region, which is west of the 100 millennium, I can't pronounce it correctly, who really are extremists. They were, you know, seem to really be part of the overall fabric of this, and we all kind of meshed in a very, very nice form. And second day, we broke into a core group, one group on boat design, other group on parts, engines, drives, pumps, and another group was even trailers, which I'm glad I wasn't on that one. And I don't recall the fourth group was about, do you recall?
Parts, trailers,
Engines, okay,
and boats.
and boats. So the engines and parts were broken aside. And a lot of things contemplated and brought forward, and the results of it is going to be a technical paper produced by ABYC that is going to be circulated for a period of year or slightly over that throughout the United States to all the manufacturers and all of the, you know, U.S. Fish and Wildlife watersheds to make comments on, and move from that to a standards to be written. But I could tell you that the thing that was phenomenally positive is people instantly started reacting to it. There are some people making changes the day we talked about it. And we had a couple companies who were out there talking about how they thought this might be a good idea, and now it's becoming a great idea, an idea that they have to do, an idea they embrace, an idea they and there were keynote speakers, you know, in that from the manufacturing segment who were speaking on behalf of the resource and its preservation. The other thing that I noticed that probably you would not be privileged to on a daily basis is that there was a drastic change in the industry publications. We're on the cover, on the front of many, many publications talking to the industry, and a lot of gratitude to ABYC by comments on the social media for hosting it. So in short, I felt it was extremely successful, and you could ask Bill how his perception of it. It was extremely grueling because we kind of started 7:30 and didn't leave until 5:30. I hardly even said hi to Bill, actually, only once. I asked him why he missed all the dinners.
So, at the end of this one-year comment period, do you think this symposium will come back together, or is this something that ABYC itself is going to be?
I think ABYC will take it from here. And it seems to me, and I was extremely impressed with their honesty. Actually, the Miami show is happening as we're talking, and I'm trying to connect with them. The problem is that they probably, during those international boat shows, they'll be going in every different direction. I'm going to fly down and see if we can connect with them. We got to make sure U.S. Fish and Wildlife are leading this task and staying on their course with them. I mean, I was kind of the bridge between public-private and the Payne who persisted. You must know how that feels now and then. But you know, the thing that in the end ABYC took it a step further. They showed the last slide, which I taken a picture of a screen. They showed that they are willing to develop a protocol for decontamination and certify people, and ask all the agency, if we develop that and we certify people, will you accept our certification? So I immediately start looking to see who's doing this and who's doing that. But they were mostly this, and if the, the threshold and the people who hold a very, very high standard, unrealistic standard, is the Western region. And I was looking at them mostly because they are probably, I give you an example why I said it's unrealistic. For example, they want all the boats shipped from the manufacturer to the dealer not to be shrink wrapped, meaning weather protected, because they want to inspect them. I'm sitting there, why are you wasting your time? I mean, those boats have never been in the water. They might be tested at the tank in the manufacturer. They're going to a dealer. They're gonna clearly been more than 21 days quarantine because nobody could manufacture and sell in 21 days. But their attitude, they're very, very rigid in their standard. So I thought it was extremely positive. I was surprised seeing the people doing this, everybody in the audience, I thought they're going to be doing this.
Manager Olson.
One of the things that struck me when I walked in the room is the size of the crowd. It was very well attended by lots of people. Half were AIS, half were manufacturers. And every one of the AIS people got up and thanked, as part of their comments, thanked Gabe for facilitating and making this thing happen. Because they said, we frankly, in the government, don't have the budget to do this. And by making this happen, it allowed them to get their message out. And they had the head of Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and California, each one got up and talked about how they inspect. And you could see the manufacturers sitting there going, oh God. And the worry that the manufacturers have is that if I make a boat and it's full of traps for AIS, and my guy who just spent all this money, my customer spent all this money on this boat, and he's got to wait in line after line after line and decontaminate after decontaminate and go through all this stress, he's going to sell that boat and he's going to move to a mobile home and he's going to hit the highway and do something else, sort of recreate with a different toy. And the idea that they won't sell boats if there's long lines, and these western states were saying everybody gets inspected. If your boat's got a problem, it's going to have to be decontaminated. And the decontamination was not just a little rinse by somebody with the hot water. The woman who got up there and gave a presentation on how she, quote, decontaminates, and she didn't want to call it washing. She says, I'll take engines apart if I have to. I'll take air conditioning systems apart if I have to. She disassembles and reassembles. So it's a big deal for those people. So the folks who make the boats were extremely interested and admitted in the first morning, we didn't know that this was an issue. We're designing safe boats, but we didn't think AIS was an issue. And so now they have a different task. And then when the manufacturers got up and started talking about how they've addressed this with their design, how they've addressed that, and then they're all starting to write down, because now that guy's got the advantage when it comes to the boat show. He can say, I've got an AIS resistant boat, and I've got this sticker that says something, and that means something to them. So now Gabe got up when he prefaced their talks and he says, I'm not appealing to your moral standards, I'm appealing to your wallet. If you want to keep selling boats, you're going to have to make a boat that people have fun with, not sit in line waiting to get checked out with. So it was a truly motivational moment for a lot of those manufacturers. And I was really impressed with how well it was run.
Manager Miller.
Let's see.
Do you sell boats?
No. I sell one boat, which is I own a company in Ohio that the Amish make wood boats, and
Oh, okay.
we make a boat every 5 years.
Oh, okay. So, and, because there's some people may be watching this that aren't familiar with it. You have marinas on Lake Minnetonka?
Yeah, I have 4 marinas on Minnetonka, yes.
So, this is not just an environmental issue per se, it's an economic issue insofar as if these lakes get contaminated, it lowers the recreational value and lowers the economic value of the people that are living on those lakes.
Well, actually, it takes away from something that we all value more than anything, called summer. Like I said, in Minnesota, if we have summer, it's usually 2.8 days of it. And if we have to take 12,000 boats off Minnetonka and wash them, not decontamination, I think we need an extra month or 2 to do it. So instead of checking in your boat at our facility for the season, usually in October or maybe, God forbid, November, we got to start thinking September. And as people figure out that for the 14 days they go out on their boat and their investment, like Bill said, they might consider taking up golfing or maybe even going downhill skiing in Chile, instead of doing it here. And ABYC is very astute to it, and they call them floaters. We do not want to lose floaters. In 2008, there were 70,000 boats manufactured and sold in the United States. In a few years ago, when the economy went bust, they went down to 158,000. The industry looking to go back to the 400,000 or 500,000, and this is not going to help them if they are not proactive about it. So besides the economy and the value of that, it's just a way of life will go away. As simple as that. There's quite a few things happened during the meeting that I felt really good about. I mean, we always have argument about washing versus decontaminating, because decontamination comes with a very, very high standard. And if we, as a service provider, certify it was decontaminated, we must know it's decontaminated. I don't believe you could decontaminate every boat. I believe you could wash every boat, and you could decontaminate some boats. So some of the problems that I have kind of mentioned to the DNR was kind of my opinion against their opinion. And I hosted a dinner the night before. Actually, we hosted a cocktail party too after that, the day after that. But the one at dinner parties, we had like 20 or 30 people who are really, really the key people who in the engine manufacturer. And I kind of briefed them that evening at their annoyance, to be honest with you, about what the issue that I'm facing and how they better be ready to play a big role. And the day after, without cueing them, they reinstated all my concern back to everybody. So I felt, okay, well, now we got that aside. Let's talk about it. So it's amazing from the night before to the midday after how severe and extreme change occurred from the night before. They, come on now, we're going to be fine, don't worry. The next day they all, well, what do you mean? I mean, why we didn't know about this? But here's the other problem that we face. This is kind of like any disease that we have in our country. There's 18 states of the union don't even want to talk about it. I hope I didn't overreach or...
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
Under information items and correspondence, we have 2 items that are in our board packets. 4.1 is the tunnel interceptor project timeline and comments, memo from Mr. Dietrich. 4.2 is a resolution to authorize hiring Irish Titan for interactive web map project. Here's an information item we brought back to the board at the end of the month for decision. Item 5, consent agenda has approval of the minutes of January 29th, 2015, this ought to say. And just that one item.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Under board committee and task force reports, President's report, I will say that I was at a meeting in Minnetrista a few days ago. Our staff, James Whisker and Renee Clark, were there. From the city, it was Mayor Lisa Whalen and the David Abel, the Community Development Director, and the City Administrator, Michael Baroni. The conversation centered around the common projects that the Watershed District and City of Minnetrista are concerned with. We talked about the Mader Wetland Bank being developed, which was very exciting to the city. We of course have an MOU with them and a number of items that we're in discussion about. The comprehensive plan project kickoff meetings are coming up, and the City of Minnetrista will be very happy to be used as an example of a cooperation in our urban ecology policy method with a city, so they will be very happy to be used in that way or co-present with us. And they specifically asked if James Whisker of our staff would come in and speak to their council and give them an opportunity to discuss the Mader Wetland Bank, other concerns and issues that they're concerned about. And I may as well go right on and talk about the executive committee meeting, which happened just before this meeting. The topic was a legislative update. So we got a briefing from Manager Shackleton about the current developments in the bill, the DNR inspections bill that's in the legislature right now. Mr. Dawson is in the meeting right now, I believe, and was not able to attend. At the conclusion of the executive committee meeting, it was our thinking that the board could have a discussion about what the messages should be. There's a hearing next Tuesday scheduled on that DNR bill, and we would want to have the administrator work with our lobbyist for AIS purposes and develop messaging and put together a slate of individuals and from here or from other organizations that would be available to speak to that committee when they have the hearing next Tuesday. And I was remiss when I was talking about the agenda, but I wonder if we could put this on as a discussion item further down to talk about messaging and strategy around the AIS legislation initiatives. Would anyone object to that? If I just dropped it down there? Thank you. And Operations and Programs Committee report, Manager Olson.
During our committee meeting, we had a chance to see discuss the questionnaire that Telemayak is going to be sending out to the citizens regarding public opinion about the watershed and our direction for the 10-year plan. And we are also talked about hiring Irish Titan for their interactive services on the web. The other thing that we covered, if I go back here to my notes, is the MS4 updates and discussion in general about where we stand on that. Interactive.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead.
MS4, I think I know what it is, but can you explain it in such a way that our television audience might understand what we're talking about?
Yes, you have a separation of sanitary and sewers and storm sewers. So storm sewers are separate from sanitary sewers. And when you have a violation of it is when you take sanitary sewers and dump them down the storm sewers. And we had a little bit of that.
Where's the 4 come in? I've been.
The 4 S's.
Okay, all right. Storm sewer,
Storm
sanitary sewer, yeah.
separate sanitary.
Okay. I think when we use that, when we describe that program after this, we should spell it all out because everybody understands what the storm and sanitary sewer separation is, but MS4 is kind of like off there in a
Yes, it's preferred by those working on it
shocking.
than to use the whole.
But the rest of us, who are all the utility users of the storm and sanitary sewer and pay for all the bills, would like to have an understanding of.
Yeah. Fair enough. Just like we treat E. coli
Yeah.
in our taking. And then the last item was a demonstration of the new digital Laserfish record storage that is remarkable in how quickly we can access documents that have been in boxes stored in basements for so long. So that's the progress is being made there.
Thank you. Manager Shackleton, could you give us two reports, the CAC meeting last night and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board golf courses?
Sure. I'll start with the CAC. So they met last night. Our administrator, Lars Erdahl, introduced himself. It was first meeting. It was the first meeting of the new CAC. It was, I think, his first CAC meeting as well. They did a new member welcome. Everybody, all the members introduced themselves, explained why they were there. Our staff did provide an overview of the cost share program, and it was just a good conversation. They were engaged. They were asking questions. They then did an election of officers. Bill Bushnell was reelected chair. Peter Reckelbach was elected vice chair. Jerry Chiridelli was reelected secretary. And they decided to elect Sliv Carlson as the alternate secretary. So they have an executive team of 4. Then they decided they brainstormed 2015 agenda topics, and there were a couple different people that asked the question of how can we bring the lessons from the CAC outside of this organization to the broader community, and they're asking about water quality updates and new knowledge and information to build on what they learned in the past. They asked to how the watershed district plans for the impacts of development, for suggestions for lawn care, in part to disseminate that information to, again, a broader community. Questions about climate change and how to leverage CAC interests to the interests of the board to help us kind of achieve our goals. And a couple people, different people offered that the CAC could be a sounding board for new ideas. And then one person said, ask the board, what do you want from us, the CAC? And then a person asked the question about aquatic invasive species, and there was a lengthy conversation about how members of the CAC could engage on AIS issues at the Capitol. We had that moment in time where it was clear, if you do anything at the Capitol, please, as we've been talking about, take the lessons you've learned here and take them out. But you're members of the CAC, you're not representatives of the organization. But there was definitely an interest to do something at the Capitol by a handful of people. What that was, they were not clear. And I think we'll have this conversation later of how do we intentionally engage the Capitol. But it's worth recognizing that there are a group of people on our CAC who are very concerned and would like to do something. Then they watched 2 videos, which were videos produced as a result of the Cynthia Krieg grants in the past. And their next meeting is going to be on March 11th. And Darren and I talked about this last night. There was we're in the process of hiring an education manager. If he can give us a quick update. Coordinator, sorry. Yes. Darren, who is our education manager, will be hiring an education coordinator. Sorry.
Mr. Lawler.
President White, Board of Managers. Basically, the update that we provided last night is we're in the midst of doing a few different interviews. One of them is for the education coordinator position. And what I highlighted with that position is we received approximately 70 applicants for that position alone. And what was really unique about this position is we received applicants from all over the country, ranging from Maryland, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wisconsin, just to name a few, in addition to the metro area. So right now, we're in the midst of interviewing 6 candidates, and we'll be narrowing down that list to probably the top 2, where we'll bring them in for a little further interview process. So that's where we are at with the education coordinator position.
And in terms of Minneapolis Park Board and their golf courses, Meadowbrook Golf Course and Hiawatha Golf Course, Minneapolis Park Board is engaged in kind of a three different meetings. They had one meeting in January where they laid out kind of the status of the golf courses and the status of potential funding partners. They had a meeting last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, where it was a public feedback meeting, and there were 2 different meetings. The first meeting, I think, had like 60 to 70 people. The next meeting had like 45 to 60 people. And I'd say that they would very easily be broken out into golfers and environmentalists. And they were seated at tables. They had maps of the golf courses, and they had 2 columns, and they had to identify issues that they wanted to solve and how they would solve them. It was there were 2 very productive meetings, very positive meetings, where you had these golfers who said, do it right. Do it one time, be done with it, do it right. If you have to shut it down for a year or 2, do it right. And that message came out from both meetings with very little overlap between the attendees. And the Park Board has expressed an interest of recognizing their partners and not attempting to do a quick fix, because they recognize that they can't come back to us for additional funds once we do something, and they can't go back to FEMA for additional funds once we do something. Just from conversations with our staff, I know that they've been engaged with the Park Board and with FEMA and with the DNR and with a whole series of other kind of local government partners, City of Edina, City of Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, Hopkins. And so I think we have the possibility of being partners in something really big in these two golf courses. After that second meeting where they took feedback from golfers and environmentalists and community, they said, we'll come back at a date to be determined, which hasn't been announced, where they'll unveil kind of some draft proposals, and they'll collect feedback on that proposal or those proposals at that meeting. They have no idea what those will look like, but they're in the process of doing something.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I should just point out that in both meetings, both sets of meetings, the people from the community that surrounded were treated by the golfers as equals. I mean, it was kind of amazing because they certainly had different interests, but they were all talking about we can't stop the flooding. We've got to figure out how to accommodate the water, and there was no pushback from the golfers on that. And they talked about possibility of re-remanding the creek, creating bigger wetlands, and also trails. And there was no objections. There was only one issue that was brought up that there was a reaction from everybody in the room. Somebody was going to make a speech against the Southwest LRT, and they got booed. But other than that, the golfers and all the other interests were accommodating one another, recognizing that there's a real problem and a real opportunity here. So it was refreshing.
Manager Olson.
Manager Shackleton, what did the golf courses do last summer after the waters receded? Did they just sit there and languish the rest of the year?
I think at Meadowbrook, 65% of the course's grass was dead. Mm-hmm. And it was a similar ratio, the lesser at Hiawatha. Hiawatha may have opened a couple of holes, but Meadowbrook was closed. So they've lost all revenue, essentially all revenue in both courses for 1 year. They're planning to lose it assuredly this year and very probably next year as well. Yep.
Do they actually have revenue or are they operating at a loss?
I didn't say it was a, yes, they're operating, Meadowbrook was.
Revenue but not profit, maybe I'm
Correct, yes,
using the wrong
yes.
language. Yeah.
Meadowbrook was actually making a profit prior to the floods. Hiawatha was not. And, I mean, the things they were talking about were everything from, you've got this old clubhouse at Hiawatha, fix up, and like you've done with sea salt at Minnehaha Falls, why not put a brew pub? Or something like that. At that clubhouse, in that it's in a neighborhood that is filled with young families, and you have this big green area, why not leverage those two assets? That was actually raised by a golfer as a solution for revenue and an opportunity to bring in new people to an area that has been underutilized.
Could we expand our interest beyond water to beer? 'Cause
A lot of beer is water.
It's in the water.
So,
Thank you very much. Manager Miller, a report on Edina.
This morning, we met with Mayor Hovland of City of Edina, James Whiskers, Lars and I, and went over the kind of the concept of the comprehensive plan and how we're going to be working with the city, and then other issues that we're facing, including Meadowbrook. And he, because the entire north side or south side of Meadowbrook is the city limits of Edina, so, and St. Louis Park and Hopkins all have the same interests. They're all surround the golf course. They're going to invite the watershed district to make a presentation to a workshop at the Edina City Council soon. And he indicated they were really appreciative of the work that our staff has done with the tear downs, which was a huge issue on the impacts on the water and surrounding homes, and that we've got a working agreement with the city, and it's really helped a lot with the confusion. There were 136 tear downs last year in Edina, and they're at a pace to do more this year. So it was a real problem that they were real appreciative of, or he was real appreciative of our solution, so that they want the rest of the council and the city staff to kind of have a full understanding of what we're doing and how we're partnering with them. So they think the workshop would be a good way of doing it, and spanning an hour. So I don't know. He didn't indicate how soon he'd schedule it, but he wanted to do it soon. So that was a good meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other events or meetings that managers like to report about? The upcoming meeting and event schedule is listed in the agenda at 7.2. We have a public hearing for the Promenade of Wayzata Cost Share project. Mr. Whisker. I don't believe so, but is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this matter? I see no hands.
Let's see here. That's problematic. There we go. Okay, great. So Chair White, managers, as Chair White just mentioned, tonight the purpose of the meeting is to hold a public hearing for consideration of cost share funding for stormwater infrastructure for the Promenade of Wayzata project, or the redevelopment of the Wayzata Bay Center by Presbyterian Homes. And I'm going to essentially cover the same basic presentation for the public hearing that I covered back in November with the Board of Managers. And the purpose for tonight would be to take public comment, and then staff would assemble those comments and appropriate responses, and then revisit this project for final consideration at a board meeting on a schedule that's appropriate given the comments that we get tonight. And so for the presentation, I'm going to cover a little bit of the project history just for the record, since this is a public hearing, talk about the partnership opportunities around stormwater infrastructure on this site, and then we'll open the hearing and take comment. So a little bit about the site history. It's a 14-acre site down by Lake Street at the edge of downtown, and essentially in 1964, the large wetland complex that was there was filled to make way for the development of the mall. And as part of that project, Gleason Creek, that drains the Gleason Creek subwatershed down into Wayzata Bay, was piped, which now runs down the middle of Superior Street. And that's important because it sort of defines some of the goals through the evolution of the planning. It defines some of the goals for the project, one of which was an attempt by the developer not to replace all the function and value of the wetland, but to at least mimic some of that pre-development hydrology and some of the hydrologic function that that wetland provided. And just really quickly, there's been, when we covered this last time, we talked about the number of different times that attempts to redevelop the site failed because of its challenging engineering constraints, because it was a wetland. There's a lot of soil subsidence, requires a lot of geotechnical and engineering work that we're not going to really get into tonight. But last time, and for the record tonight, what I wanted to cover is a little bit of the history of the site's planning as it relates to the district. In 2007, Presbyterian Homes approached the City of Wayzata and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District with a concept of managing a 100-year storm on the site, which was very appealing to us. It had been an innovative demonstration of management of a very rare but large storm event. And then in 2008, that general plan was submitted to the city with the 100-year concept. And then following 2008, the Watershed District and the city and the engineer and engineers from around the region participated in a value engineering process that moved the design of the project away from a 100-year storm towards something that was equally challenging on this site, but more practical and still retained a lot of the high level of water quality benefit. And that was a 1-year design storm, which gets you about over 90% of your annual pollutant load. With regards to volumes and rates, there were still attempts, and we'll talk through how that worked, to manage volumes and rates towards pre-development hydrologic conditions. And so in 2009, there was 3 different infiltration basins proposed across the site, and then that changed yet again after 2009, because right around that time, the project was put on hold because of the economy. But fast forward to today, this was the approved stormwater plan included in the planned unit development with the city. And this is what was submitted for grant funding to the district back in 2012 when the board considered this project. And that's what I'm going to walk you through tonight. And there's a variety of different components. There's 3 different basins across the site: 1 infiltration basin, 1 filtration basin, the East Block Pond, which is essentially underground. There's over an acre of hard cover reduction in the form of green roof, and then there's a hydronic geothermal fed snowmelt system which reduces chlorides. And so we just take a quick look at those various systems. So the Engel Infiltration Basin, which is located right here, oops, you don't see my mouse, up on the northeast corner of the site, is essentially a 40-foot by 80-foot precast vault that's 200 feet wide, 300 feet long. It's got essentially a bunch of engineered fill below it, high-quality sands, and that treats about 5 acres of runoff from buildings, the building roofs, before it's directed to the detention vault, and the series of 48-inch pipes where it is then infiltrated. So the bottom right is a picture of that first vault that takes all of the water and lets all the coarse sediment and pollutants settle out, and then it passes on to the infiltration vault. That takes the full 2.4-inch runoff event from 5 acres. And so while they're shooting for a 1-year design storm, different parts of the site go greatly above the 1-year design storm. The Mill Street filtration basin, which is sort of in the middle of the site, is similar in construction and detail to that detention vault, but because of soils and where it's located, the water here just filters through sand. This takes a 4-inch runoff event, fully filtered from 5 acres of the site, which is about 99% of all storms for the 5 acres of drainage that it takes. The East Block Pond, this gets to some of the hydrologic management for the site. There's a stormwater pond on the southeast corner of the site under current conditions. The developer had originally proposed to actually eliminate that, but because of managing water to downstream conveyance, the city storm sewer and ponds in the lake, this was actually included and expanded. And this takes about 2 acres of walks and streets on site, 10 acres from surrounding residential, and then 10 acres that flow to the pond after coming through a series of upstream wetlands. And like I mentioned, this is really in place to manage regional runoff that then makes its way to the city storm system in the grid along Lake Street. There's a sort of a bubble map of where the water's coming from and where it's going. The green roofs, this is really sort of serving multiple functions for the housing component of the development. So it manages some runoff and also obviously provides some amenity value for the residential units that face the green roof. And so those are incorporated. It's about 1.1 acre total green roof, and with some intensive plantings or extensive plantings, those are, that's just a way to characterize how deep the planting media is and how good of a job it does at managing runoff. And then a little bit about the snowmelt system. The old Bay Center was about 8 acres of pedestrian and vehicle pavement, and we did some rough modeling and rough assumptions looking at approximately 10 events a year requiring salt application in Minnesota, and the estimated application rate for 8 acres using 10 events a year is about 32 tons of salt that would have been applied to this site on an annual basis. So if you think about this development's been in place since 1975. That's about 1,200 tons of salt to Lake Minnetonka, not all of which ends up in Minnehaha Creek, but chlorides are an issue for freshwater systems. And one of the things that's been incorporated as a good development practice, since this is assisted and senior living, so it's good marketing material for Presbyterian homes, but also has this secondary water quality benefit, is this hydronic snow melt system. And essentially when it's complete, this series of pipes that takes geothermally heated water under the sidewalks and streets, there'll be 80 miles of that put through this site, and it will reduce salt application on this site to 0. And so, you know, that's an important consideration in terms of water quality and best management practices and innovation for this particular project. And, you know, just an added element is the fact that if you think about how events are distributed over the year and how we apply salt, typically all of that accumulates, and then you have one melt event in the spring, and so you get a large pulse or flush of nutrients and salt and in the spring. And so this periodic melting slowly delivers the polluted runoff to the stormwater systems that can then better manage that, so you don't get a large nutrient pulse off the site at the end of the year. So it essentially results in a higher efficiency than sort of a regular system.
Can you say where the geothermal source is? What are they doing?
I'd turn to Chris Meaner, the district engineer, to talk about where the geothermal is located and exactly how it works.
Managers, how the geothermal works is the whole facility is built on pilings. So the pilings go down a significant way they've done is they brought the geothermal down the pilings. And so that's the way they're pumping to heat back up to run through the water. So they're using that as a natural heating system to serve as the snow melt capacity. So that's where the geothermal is coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So that's a summary of the approved stormwater plan and how stormwater management is distributed across the site. And I'm not going to cover all the chronology and history, but just enough to talk through that. Back in 2012, the board had taken this project up for consideration and looked at funding in the range of about $585,000. There's been a lot of discussion with Presbyterian Homes on and off since then. And what we covered in November is that starting sort of in earnest in 2014, re-engaged with discussions with Presbyterian Homes on the project, discussed the need to bring this back to the board for decision. We toured the site, met with the city, and we made that presentation in November, which I think was just to summarize, sort of a conservative analysis of the benefits of the project from staff's perspective. So when we came in November, one of the things that we'd looked at is I'd applied the Watershed District's regulatory filter. For cost share funding for these types of projects, the Watershed District typically funds what is an exceedance of regulatory requirements. And while this project wasn't subject to the district's regulatory requirements, that's the filter that we chose to use to take the most conservative approach. And if you look at what the site produced in terms of pollutants in a pre-development condition to post-development condition, there's essentially a 12-pound phosphorus load reduction. Not looking at total suspended solids or chlorides or volume or some of these other benefits, but just phosphorus 12-pound reduction. But in my presentation to the board in November, we're sort of giving Presbyterian Homes credit for only 1.5 pounds if we'd have applied our rules, which didn't apply at the time of the original application and also didn't apply because they're subject to the city's planned unit development requirements, which has stormwater controls. So during that conversation with the board, we got direction from the Board of Managers to essentially go back and look at ascribing cost to this project across a broader suite of benefits that recognize some of the snow melt benefits and chloride reductions, the fact that hardcover was reduced on the site, not just looking at phosphorus metrics, evaluate education benefits that could be integrated into the site, and talk to Presbyterian Homes and then come back with a revised value, and that's what we're here to do tonight. And we got some direction to do that and to obviously not exceed the original cap that was discussed back in 2012 of about $585,000. And so I want to talk a little bit before I show you the next slide and the numbers about the philosophy of how we went back through and took a different approach at looking at the cost and the benefits. And essentially what we did is, rather than looking at the median range of dollars that the Watershed District has spent on comparable cost share projects in the past for 1.5 pounds of load reduction, which we thought was conservative, we looked at bid tabs across the district for projects that have actually been constructed and what real world costs are for stormwater infrastructure that accomplish phosphorus benefits, total suspended solid benefits, volume benefits, made some assumptions about chloride benefits, and then we also took a look at working with Darren Lochner and Telly Mamayak in education and communications opportunities for education benefits on the site in two categories. One category as far as education and outreach, so public service announcements, timed in the movie theater, signs, use of all their display cases, electronic display cases, their materials in the lobby and their electronic displays, kiosks, and then those values were sort of calculated against the expected audience reach, so some projections and assumptions in there, what we typically pay for ad buys or promotional materials. And then the other category of education and outreach and programming, we looked at workshops that we might be able to hold here, continuing education for engineers for licensure and other sorts of programming, the meeting space that would be made available in the variety of meeting spaces for across the site, and the ability for the district to hold events like our comprehensive plan kickoff meetings, those sorts of things. So that's the philosophy that we went through, that we used to revise the numbers and look at them. And these are how those break down across the categories if you use bid tabs for infrastructure that achieve these benefits. I'm not going to get into what those bid tabs are and all the details. We could bring that back if that's something that's desired. But the recommendation is for $307,290. And those are the line items, $117,000 attributed towards the pollutant load reduction benefits, $160,000 towards the volume reduction benefits, $18,000 for the chlorides, and $12,290 for education and outreach programming opportunities across the site. And so with that, what I'd like to do is take any questions that the public has, assemble those, see if that changes the recommendation one way or the other, and bring it back at the earliest available opportunity based on the comment that we get for final board consideration.
There is no one in the audience who wished to make a comment to the board. Do you recommend that we leave a comment period open for written comments? We've done that recently, leave it open a week, but if your timeline doesn't work for that.
No, I think we can do that. I'm just thinking through the calendar, perhaps a week beyond today's public hearing, which I will point out was noticed in accordance with 103B 251. That's a Minnesota statute that guides our public hearing requirements. So it's been published in the Star Trib and sent out to communities, and the last procedural point I'd mention with regards to the grant application is I did just distribute a letter of support from the city of Wayzata, which is something that we're not obligated to get, but something that we seek for cost share applications.
Mr. Jabour, did you wish to make a comment?
Yes. Gabriel Jabour, 985 Tonkawa Road. What concerned me the most about government at large is they don't seem to pay much attention on self-imposed problems. You know, I would like to have a Ferrari, and I want to know what you guys are going to do for me. It's a self-imposed problem. And we talked with Manager Miller and Brian about when the LMCD were posing issues and we're running to save them. And in my estimation, all of this is a waste of time for the district unless best practices are adopted and embraced by the municipality that you are working within. You can't just throw your money on a project and it look great and we'll write papers about it and people will say how good it is, and upstream they're bulldozing every single thing and turning it into. I have a photograph that I'd like to share with you. It's called Strip Mining on Minnetonka. That photograph hangs in the state capitol, one of our legislators' office, to show them the decay we are doing with the help of our cities. As you spending $1 million vegetating shoreline, exactly simultaneously at the same hour, other municipality giving permission to tear it down. So what I suggest, if you are about to do anything in any city, although this is not a city project, hook it up contractually. Now you're not legislating. Contractually, you could go back and say, if you want our money, you got to live in the same principle of life we do. Because I really feel that many of the cities put their best suits on, their nicest tie, every time they ask you for money. Within 5 minutes after receiving the money, another project happened upstream that totally make a mockery out of the system. So I mean, I'm not speaking for or against this, but this has been a hot subject for me. I know it's been up and down with you guys, and I really believe I really take my hat off to the governor trying to protect 50 feet of lakeshore throughout the whole state of Minnesota. And the particular parcel of land I'm talking about is his uncle's home, that his uncle protected forever. And within one buyer, they strip mined it. And I'd be happy to share it with you and put it on Facebook if you need it, or the district. But really figure out a way to hook some standards, upstream, downstream, shoreline management. Otherwise, as your right hand is building, your left hand is steering. Thank you for hearing me. I hope I didn't wear out my welcome.
Is it appropriate, Mr. Holtman, that I close the public hearing at this point before board discussion?
Mr. Chair, yes, that's appropriate. And if you, I don't know if you're extending the period for comment.
Do we need to extend the period for comment? All right, we will take written comment up to 4:30 PM on the 19th? Does that work?
19th, next Thursday?
Yeah, Week from today.
That's fine.
Oh, you had a question, Manager Casella.
Yeah, could you go over what the notification was? Was it just the people, was it just the property owners surrounding that? You mentioned communities. Who was included in the notification?
The notification under 103B includes publication in the Star Tribune and then distribution of the plan, if you will, to the counties and notice to all member communities.
Which would be all 29
Yes.
communities. So every city around the lake, their city manager or whomever received that, so they've all been notified that this project is occurring and what we're planning to do.
That's right.
And when did that occur?
I had staff do that for me. So the requirements are for publication are at least 10 days before today, so that would have been last Monday. And then once in a prior week. And so those would have been the Star Tribune publications, and then it would have been essentially last Monday for distribution to the communities as well.
3 days ago or a week ago Monday?
10 days ago.
10 days ago. Okay. Thank you.
Manager Olson?
How much information was in the Star Tribune, and when would they have seen that?
Well, it would have been published on, I don't have my calendar, but 10 days ago. And then the week prior to that, I'd have to look at the affidavit. And it's actually been, I'll point out, it's been published twice, so it's been in the paper 4 times. Because I published it and then we weren't ready to bring it before the board. In terms of the blurb notice, it describes generally the project location, a summary of the benefits, so that it's a stormwater improvement project, what the scope of the project is, what the costs are, the municipality in which it's located. So it's a paragraph blurb about the project.
Manager Olson?
Should we have all received that as well? Well, what was in the
It isn't
newspaper?
standard, it's just in the paper, right?
Yeah, but that's something that we could easily do, and I think I have done that in the past, so we can certainly make sure that is the standard, so that you know when we're noticing everything.
Manager Calkins?
We've struggled with notice in a variety of ways over the years, and
It was also on the headline of our website too.
And just thinking about this particular notice, I would not have gotten it. Because I don't get the Star Tribune anymore. So I think it's something that the district should probably revisit as far as how we can best reach out to people who live in the community, whether that be local papers or some other way, because I'm guessing that there's a growing segment of the citizens that live in the district that are not going to get it in the ways that the district is disseminating the information.
Yeah, I mean, we do the best we can. We can certainly do better. It's just a question of time and money, so we can revisit and bring back some options at the pleasure of the board.
What has happened meets the standards of state law,
It exceeds.
exceeds the standards of state law. Manager Casal?
Well, since we've changed the public notices that go out to us on the emails, and they now nicely have in the subject line the address of everything.
Yeah.
Thank you again very much. I would certainly appreciate it if these public notices for these kind of hearings went out that way, because then it would be really clear what it's coming for.
Thanks.
Yep, apologize for that.
Well, I cannot unilaterally extend the public notice period. I feel that was a suggestion, but I could just close the public hearing, unless the board wishes otherwise. Manager Casal?
I would move that we extend it to written comments through next Thursday at 4:30, as you referenced earlier.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item for consideration is 10.2, under action items, the resolution for district-wide signage master plan. Mr. Lochner. And Ms. Mamayak.
There we go. President White, Board of Managers, the request for board action that we have tonight is the approval of the Minnehaha Creek District-wide signage master plan and sign templates. The RBA outlines the development of how the sign projects came to be. Originally, the sign project originally was brought before the board as a development of the creek signage landings master plan, which I brought before you last month. In January of 2014, the board made the decision to expand the creek signage effort and add in a broader district-wide signage initiative. And that's how those two master plans came to be. So a separate master plan was the creek signage and landings master plan, which again I presented last month. And what I'm presenting before you this evening is the district-wide signage templates. So essentially in your packets has the electronic file of the master plan that was recently completed. The goal of this master plan was to basically develop a comprehensive inventory and assessment of all existing signs throughout the watershed district. And also part of this was an opportunity for us to develop some consistent templates for signage. And some of those categories for signage include basic informational signs, interpretive signs, access and usage, and temporary construction and restoration signs. So the master plan includes basically a map of all the current existing signs throughout the watershed district. It also has an inventory of all those signs in terms of where those signs exist, who developed them, and also their status and whether they need to be replaced or if they have some existing conditions that we would need to keep tabs on. And so also within the master plan includes photo documentation of all those signs as well. And then, excuse me one. So what you see before you here is kind of the suite of sign templates that we've developed as well. And those were developed in consultation with many of our partners. We worked with our graphic designer. And then internally, we also worked with staff to develop a consistent brand for the watershed district. And these are the templates that we're proposing. And I'll have my colleague Telly talk a little bit about our brand manual and kind of how that process has developed along with this effort.
Thank you, Darren. President White, managers, as Darren pulls up the slides for the next part of the presentation, just to give you a little history, our brand manual was developed as part of the new logo that was incorporated into the district communications efforts back in 2009. And so we've been using the same brand manual for the last several years. The same logo, the same color palette, and this past year in 2014, our graphic design artist had started incorporating some additional elements and making it a bit more contemporary. And so that was an organic process that really started with the mid-year report and actually dating back to the 2013 annual report. And so as we started developing additional materials, it became apparent that it was time to incorporate those elements into our brand manual. So the brand manual update includes updated logos, so they're refined versions of the current logo, so not a whole-scale change, but just some tweaks. And also the addition of a new one-color logo option, updated typefaces, an expanded color palette, and graphic design features, a title bar and a notch. So we'll run through those various elements really quickly here. So this is our new primary logo, the one with the tagline, quality of water, quality of life. The former primary logo was the same orientation, the vertical logo, but without the tagline. Our communications plan for 2014 and 15 that was developed by staff in coordination with Himley Rapp and approved by the board in late 2013, recommended that quality of water, quality of life, the tagline, be incorporated as much as possible in our communications, because that really tells the story of what we do and what we're about, and really underscores our balanced urban ecology approach. So this was decided that this would be our primary logo. So as you can see, it's very similar to the logo we have been using. The only major difference here would be the border around the waterfall graphic is a bit wider and bolder than the previous one. But the same primary colors, the processed cyan and the rich black there, as well as the white. And our secondary logos have been streamlined to these choices: the vertical logo without the tagline, the two horizontals with and without, and then the banner logo on the bottom of the screen, which we use on our news releases and other special publications. And again, you'll notice that the border around the waterfall graphic is a bit more thick, and the typeface has been updated to be a little more contemporary. And thirdly, we added a one-color logo that is most used on our one-color or dark background. So it was determined by our graphic design artist that the previous logo did not show up very well with dark backgrounds. And there are certain cases in which we need to put our logo on a dark background. And so this was developed. The one on the right would be an example of what you would use on a dark background. The other one would be an example of one you would use on, for instance, our canoe signage incorporates this new one-color logo because it would be viewed from afar, and the fine detail in our primary logo would be lost from large distances. So this is a very clean, sleek, contemporary look that's very visible in those situations. And so the typeface families, I'm not a graphic design artist, but I'm told that these are much more contemporary than what we had been using. They're cleaner lines, easier to read. The Avenir text is for our headings, the Myriad Pro for the text in our publications, like our fact sheets and our newsletters. And this is the color palette. So we're now using a neutral and dynamic color palette. We have many more choices. Previously, what we had were our primary colors, the cyan and the black. And then we had 4 secondary colors and 3 accent colors, with very few gradients of those available. This allows us much more variety and gives us just a nice mellow feel, if you will, and very easy on the eyes and very modern. And these are the two graphic design features I mentioned, the title bar and the notch. You've seen these already in our annual reports. We're incorporating them now into our fact sheets, our poster boards, which you will see at our comp plan kickoff meetings next week, incorporate all these design elements. And now our signage as well is going to be incorporating these elements and these colors. So everything will be very correlate with each other and very consistent and have that brand appear throughout all of our messaging and materials.
Real quick, title bar, what is, you're pointing to that, what are you highlighting?
I am highlighting these 5 lines of dots that will occur be placed at the top of a page where the title is, and it's just to accent and draw your eye to the title.
Okay, so it's just a strip. So
Yes.
it'll be short if the title's long, and long if the title's short.
Right, correct. And the notch guides your eye. It guides your eye from the text to the picture that it's talking about.
Yep.
Or referring to.
Easier to do the work. Yeah, easier
That's
on
right.
the eye.
The whole point is, yes, to be easier on the eye, easier to read, and just much more contemporary as well.
Okay.
So that all of these design changes then have been formalized in our brand manual and have informed the development of our signs.
Can I ask a question?
Management what?
We were all involved in the first branding manual. And some of us would suggest we were too involved, but I think it's serving well, and I really like this update. But what I would hope we could do is have a board action to officially adopt it by resolution, so that people don't have any leeway unless they come back to the board about changing the branding or the format or the colors or whatever, because there's been a lot of work gone into this and a lot of thought, and I would suspect a lot of money. So want to make sure that everybody is a formal action of the board in that there's not any flexibility in this, because otherwise it's senseless drawing up these manuals and adopting these programs. So,
Ms. Mayak.
President White, Manager Miller, managers, just in response to that, yes, we have been working with the same graphic design artist who did the original brand manual, and since they were simple updates and not whole-scale changes, had not planned to bring an RBA, but would be happy to do that in March to the board so that we can officially have that adopted, and that was the goal of bringing the design templates to the board so as to have that endorsement from the Board of Managers of the product. So we can very much do that next month with the brand manual. And I also wanted to tell you that our graphic design artist, Justin Hickman, provides excellent value to the district and actually is a very cost-efficient choice for us.
good, I'm sure.
I had cut you off. Did you have more to say?
No, I just want to make sure that, that this hard work is recognized and made permanent, and that there's no further decisions anybody can make. I mean, seems pretty comprehensive, and if they want to change something, they have to come back to the board on the communication.
What would you, in your motion, allow for small changes or tweaking?
I'm not going to do anything but ask that a resolution be passed, so it's official board action, mandating that this is the whatever the graphic manual and communication format.
Any discussion of that idea? Okay, go on.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the brand manual update part of the presentation, so Darren will proceed.
So President White, Board of Managers, essentially with the master plan, it's a guiding document both internally and externally. So it's an opportunity to work with staff internally as we're working with project development. We recently had an opportunity at Cottageville Park, as that project will soon be under construction next spring. And so we worked with a sign designer to use some of these basic sign templates to guide that signage effort. So that's in a case where we worked with an external consultant to have these templates in place. And also internally, it helps staff kind of get a sense of what our expectations are for branding the watershed district, what look we want to convey, whether it's an access, a usage sign, or informational sign.
You know, I may have been misunderstood. I wasn't suggesting you guys are gonna violate it. It's future staff or other staff people. Because, you know, I know that you adhere to the manual that you put together.
I understand.
But, you know, just so that it's an official act.
President White, Board of Managers, I think that concludes our presentation. And again, we're asking for approval of the district-wide signage template, our master plan and signage templates this evening.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Manager Calkins?
I had a couple, and actually we haven't seen all the signs, but I don't see the use of the title bar in any of the sign examples that we had. Is there a reason for that, or where would it show up, I guess, if it doesn't show up in some of the ones that we had before us? All the ones we had before us were centered signs. I don't know if that makes a difference.
President White, Manager Calkins, managers. So this is a guideline, so generally this would be the template that we would use. However, the graphic design artist designing any particular sign for the district would have some latitude that would include using some of these other elements from the brand manual, like the notch and the title bar. These don't reflect that, but that doesn't preclude their use. And in fact, we have an artist who's working on some signs for the Reach 20 project who is going to be producing signs within these parameters, but they will look different from this. Not in terms of the header and the footer, but the content is not going to be quite like this, because allowing for the latitude for the interpretation of the material. So these aren't hard and fast, they're guidelines. And most of our signs will look and conform to this, but there will be some variations.
So is the intent for the title bar to look like it runs off to the edge of the sign, or would it be indented from the right?
So the title bar and the notch will be primarily used in our publications, I should clarify. And it would normally run from the left to the right with the title on the left. And then the title bar would continue the line to the right. So you'll see that in our annual report that will be distributed at our kickoff meetings next week. We also have a fact sheet that we're going to be distributing as well that night on our new E-grade program.
But the intent is for it to, could you find that one again?
We're having some issues with the technology, so there may be a little pause before we get it back up, and maybe not.
So the intent is for it to run basically off the edge of the page like that?
Yes, that is the intent.
Typically, when I see something like that, it is usually indented a little bit on the right side, usually in relationship to the rest of the text on the page, like it is on the left in this case.
Yep.
So I was just curious, because for some reason it bothers me. So I was curious about that. Just something to think about.
Thank you.
And the other thing that has bothered me about the signs ever since we started working on them is that there is no indication of a lake in the sign, that it's very creek-centric. Both the logo, which I understand, but the new logo, you know, with the curvy line on the stream that comes out of it, that the district is much bigger than Minnehaha Creek, and I think that that's something that the district has struggled with for some time, is there's a lot of people who don't know that Lake Minnetonka is a part of the district, as well as the other lakes that are in the district. So it would be nice in the future at some time to be thinking about, is there a way that we could work something in here that gives the feeling that there's a lake involved, and I think that that could be a fairly easy tweak of what's here. Basically, you have the creek, and it could be originating from a lake or something like that, but it's just kind of bothered me that the district is much more than Minnehaha Creek.
Thank you, that's good feedback.
Manager Olson.
It's an interesting question. How much water in our system is on the primary side of the dam and how much is on the secondary side of the dam. Interesting.
Which is the primary, which is the secondary?
Yeah.
Well, Grays Bay side, Grays Bay West. How much water?
Yeah.
Just behind the dam.
Actually, upstream is a lot. more.
Upstream is enormous.
This is a tangential question about the creek signage primarily. Some of our signs are on property that the district owns, and some on signs owned by other entities. And I know that there's a collaboration with, for example, Minneapolis Parks or Denton Parks. But I was wondering about sign ordinances and whether they affect our signs and how much information you have about that. Whether that's part of the consideration.
President White, Board of Managers, basically with all the signs, whether it's the creek signs or whether it's the signs throughout the district, any development or replacement would involve communications with those local partners. So there will be some variability. One case where, in talking with some of our partners, is when you look at signage on bridge decks. So on the creek, our proposal is to have signs that would label like Hopkins Crossroad or some of those other major roadways that cross the creek. And so that would be a matter of whether it's working with the county or the Department of Transportation. So there would be different individuals that we would have to work with in the case of our canoe landing signs to make sure that they conform with their standards. So those communications will happen. Again, the master plans for both the creek signage and the district-wide signage are recommendations, and that we may need to kind of move from those standard recommendations based on whether if there's a local ordinance or other requirements.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, does someone have a motion?
There was a motion.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. Any further discussion? And it's been seconded as well. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
President White?
Yes.
President White, Board of Managers, just one other comment. We do have limited copies of both of these master plans. If any of you are interested in the actual physical copy, in addition to the electronic copies that you have received, please let me know and I can get them out to you.
Thank you.
We're trying to keep the physical copies at a minimum, but if you do want a copy for your use, let us know.
Item 11.1, Ecosystem Evaluation Program Update. Ms. Christensen and Ms. Dooley.
President White, Board of Managers. Yvette and I are here to provide an update on the Ecosystem Evaluation Program and the progress that has been made since we last met in November. To recap, the Ecosystem Evaluation Program is the district's new grading system that provides a holistic view of the health of each subwatershed and then the entire watershed. This program will allow the planning department to better identify target water resource areas that need improvement and protection, which then allows all departments to focus on management strategies in these areas. For communication purposes, we are now referring to the Ecosystem Evaluation Program as the E-Grade program.
The what?
The E-Grade.
E-grade.
E standing for ecosystem. The program is under development from 2014 to 2017, with the first set of subwatershed E-Grade reports to be released in the fall of 2017. During the development, the test subwatersheds for the new grading system are the Lower Minnehaha Creek, the Schutz Lake, and the 6 Mile Marsh. There are 7 features in this new grading system, and currently under development are the deep and shallow lakes, streams, and wetland features. And then the remaining 3 will be beginning to be developed in July 2016.
So one of the main tasks staff has been working on is developing a communication plan for the E-Grade program. And that draft communication plan is in your packet. We have been working with the communication staff to complete a one-page brochure that outlines the program for the upcoming comp plan kickoff meeting next week. We have also been collaborating with the planning staff to use the water resource data collected for the E-grade program as a part to inform the direction and scope of the 2017 comprehensive plan. We've also been working with permitting. We're working with the staff there to ensure the wetland feature is developed as a useful tool to assess the wetlands for the district.
We also want to highlight some of the work completed to date on those 4 features. With the assistance of the Technical Advisory Committee, which has been comprised of staff from the U of M, the DNR, the MPCA, and other local agencies, we have been able to fill in the function and metric columns for the 4 features as seen in tables 1 through 3 in the status report provided by WINC. We are ahead on developing stream and wetland features, and we are currently still developing the lake feature, as the DNR is, as we speak, currently completing the fish and macroinvertebrate IBI metrics. And IBI again stands for Index of Biological Integrity. All in all, we are on schedule to meet the June 26th deadline for all 4 features. Staff will be meeting with the Technical Advisory Committee again in March and April to review these metrics, hopefully finalize them, and we'll be bringing an update to the board shortly thereafter.
So as the E-grade program continues to develop for the next 3 years, staff intends to bring periodic updates to the board so you know what's going on. And then at this time, if you have any questions about any information that's in your packet this evening, we'd be happy to answer them.
Manager Olson?
What will the E-grade look like to the common person who's sitting on a lake and says, what's my grade? Do they get a number? Do they get a letter? Do they get
It's still under development.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. We'll be bringing you that information once it's developed.
As a parent, I would be very interested in, is it safe to swim in? So if I get a grade, I really don't care about the grade as much as what it means.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
You know, which,
Thank you.
somebody else.
Had you completed yours?
I'm done.
Okay, Manager Miller?
You know, an interesting follow-on of that would be how we make sure the grade is meaningful. Most of the time, people are nervous about putting a grade on something if it's inferior, because it'll cause people to react against the grader normally. So how do you deal with, you know, I wouldn't want to be on a D lake, you know, because impacts on the values and other things. But I'd want to know what kind of lake I was really on or looking at.
Sometimes you want a D lake,
A what?
a D lake,
Okay.
because of the house values.
But I don't know, maybe it's not an issue, but I've seen gradings mean nothing, you know, on other programs, because everybody's so sensitive about how people are going to react to their property or their asset being graded less than superior.
Ms. Christensen and then Manager Colton.
President White, Manager Miller, managers, this piece for the grading, actually, we haven't determined what type of grading system we're going to have. It could be A, it could be an AF grade, it could be good versus poor. The first part of it is just working on the metrics to figure out what we want to look at and what we want to measure. And then the second piece will be the actual, how do we want to present this to the community as a report card system.
To further support Yvette Manager White, Manager Miller, not all lakes are swimmable, and so that may not be able to be graded on some lakes, and so it just won't have a grade. It'll just, the note to it saying this lake's function is not swimmable. It's a wetland that acts like a lake or vice versa. So not every water body is going to have necessarily the same functions to be graded.
Thank you. Manager Colton.
Just to Manager Miller's point first, I think the intent, as we've been discussing this, is that there is a good solid justification for the metrics that are used to calculate the grade, however the grade ends up being calculated. So if the district does a good job of that, it should justify why a grade is an A versus a grade is a D. And my response to a D grade, and that's what I would hope would be one of the things that the grading system would do, is that it would get people's attention and get them focused on how do we make our D lake a B lake, or a better grade. So that I think is the goal from the district's perspective.
But I hope we don't submit to pressure for people that are concerned that their grade is not high enough and change the grading to not meaning. I agree with you. I think, you know, a stark contrast between the lakes is helpful to improve the quality. But we got to make sure that we don't diminish the starkness if it's called for.
And I think that's the goal, because we've also discussed that because, in my opinion, the grades that we have now are so weak because they're only based basically on water clarity, that they're not really giving a good picture of whether the lake is it's the true quality of the water body, and that it's very likely, based on this new system, that grades are going to go down, because we're taking a much broader look at what goes into water quality. So that's a concern, but I haven't seen any indication that I think staff's going down the right road as far as, you know, picking the metrics and then making sure that they're justifiable.
Sure.
I had notes kind of scribbled all over here that, and I think I can remember what they all were, but the district collects a lot more. It collects data like dissolved oxygen, for example, and that doesn't show up in here anywhere. Where would that show up in a grading system, or would it not, and would it be dropped, or it might be in the text someplace, but it isn't called out under one of the primary headings?
President White, Manager Calkins, some of these metrics will be going along with the state's standards, and dissolved oxygen is one of the standards. So we probably will be looking at something in that area. I'm not sure if it's actually mentioned on here or not, but that is something that we could talk to the consultants about a little bit more, and our TAC committee members, to see what their thoughts are on that process as well.
Well, I was thinking about where it would go, and it would be true of water clarity isn't specifically mentioned, but Secchi depth is.
Yeah.
And that's under nutrient cycling.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if nutrient cycling maybe isn't the best name for that category. It might be water chemistry, because then some of the other things that would go in there, or water chemistry and clarity or something, but it doesn't seem obvious to me as to where those other things that district managers would go.
Sure.
So just a thought.
Okay.
The other one had to do with, I think, the shoreline condition, I think it's called Shoreline Development Index, is, I believe, only mentioned under Deep Lakes. And it doesn't show up under wetlands for sure. And I'm not sure, I don't think it shows up under shallow lakes either.
Well, table 1 is supposed to technically represent deep and shallow. They didn't want to provide two. The consultant did provide two tables.
That's my mistake.
Okay.
Streams.
Streams. Okay.
It's not on streams. It's not on wetlands either. And I was curious as to why that would be.
We can bring you that answer back at our next update.
That's fine. I already mentioned chlorides would be the other one, and specifically because Minnehaha Creek is impaired chlorides. So the question would be is, where does that show up? And the last question I had to do with how the grading system would handle AIS. And they appear to be handled not as a factor by themselves, but under other categories. So I think it's under the floristic index for curly pondweed is mentioned there, but zebra mussels is called out separately someplace else. So I guess I'd like to have a little bit better feeling for how AIS would fit into this for all of the water bodies, where that would fit and how it would be handled.
I believe Manager White, Manager Calkins, AIS will probably be fleshed out more with the TAC committee in March, but we'll take that comment. Thank you.
Thanks. Otherwise, I'm thrilled.
Other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item is update on the City of Minnetrista, the Mader Family Trust. I see we have guests here. And the MCWD partnership, Ms. Hall.
Chair White, managers, Courtney asked me to give a brief introduction and then sort of pitch it to her, so we're tag teaming the presentation a little bit tonight. But I wanted to start off by just highlighting how excited we are really to be able to present check-in on this partnership that we have with the City of Minnetrista and the Mader family. Because Courtney is going to go ahead and show you how, by linking up with the City of Minnetrista, who has the Land Use Authority, working proactively with the family who originally came in just to ask what the rules were, that we've linked conservation and land use planning. And we're going to show you how, by doing those together, how we've produced a plan that can get much higher and broader value than if we just given them the rules like they wanted. And I'm talking about more economic value, more natural resource value than by doing either one alone. And so what we're really excited about is we feel, and so does the city, and so does the Mader family. There's 2 letters of support in your packet that I'd want to call your attention to and make sure that you read those. Is that this is a great example of how land use and water, when done together, we get much better benefits for both the environment and for the development of our communities. And we feel like this will be a great example for use in the comprehensive plan. It showcases really the spirit of the balanced urban ecology in a suburban setting. And one of the things that I wanted to do real quick is just read you a quote from the City of Minnetrista's letter, which I think kind of says it all, and again showcases how the district can add value in the role of land use planning in a collaborative manner. And we've gotten involved in land use affairs in various instances in the past that were not so collaborative. So, and those have been since I've been here. So I think this really highlights that we're onto something that really works here. And the City of Minnetrista in their letter said, following recent discussions regarding the district's value-added model focused on responsive partnerships that integrate land use and natural resource planning, the City of Minnetrista is excited about the potential for this project to serve as an example of what can be achieved through creative collaboration. Working hand in hand with the landowner, the City of Minnetrista and the district have developed a plan that incentivizes private investment in the creation of the first wetland bank in the district, creates the potential for the city to attain load reduction credit under the state mandated total maximum daily load framework, maximizes tax base realized from the parcel while preserving key natural resources that are important to the city, and it offers the greatest potential economic return for the landowner while meeting their goals of preserving the legacy of the landscape. And I'd say that's a pretty rousing testimonial, and I just wanted to read that into the record as to get us started in terms of how excited staff is about this as the potential to serve as a model as we get into the comprehensive plan. And the purpose for tonight is to really talk about how we can carry this forward and make sure it actually gets implemented.
Thanks, James. So I'm really excited to talk to the board tonight because this kind of presents a new way of doing business for the permitting department. If we are involved proactively in land use development, we can achieve better outcomes and greater natural resource conservation. We're involved on the front end. So tonight I'm just going to kind of take you through the history of the MOU, give you a project summary, and then talk about next steps in the development plan. So a little bit of background on how the MOU came about. The Maders came in to ask about permitting. They wanted to know how our rules worked and how they might affect future development of their land. And this is a typical question that we get a lot in the permitting department. But when people come in to see us, this is kind of what we see on a regular basis. So people come in, they already have an idea of what they want to do with the land. They've already gone through preliminary plat with the city. And so what we're left to do is negotiate small buffer impacts or work with buffer averaging with the applicant, try to mitigate wetland impacts. But then areas like this peninsula here, that probably would have been better off being conserved because it's so close to both edges of the wetland. We really don't have a say in that, and we can't do anything about it because the way it is on this plan, it meets our rules. So we're left with, little action to help the applicant in this part and to help the natural resource part of our goals. So when the Maters came into us, we thought they didn't really have anything envisioned for the land, but they had goals that they outlined, and we knew that we could do better. We could do better than this. So we executed a memorandum of understanding with the Maters and the city of Minnetrista that outlined all three parties' goals and aligned the authorities of the partnership. And we've seen this as a great tool used in the past, so I thought that would be a great opportunity to do this with the permitting program. So instead of kind of getting the leftovers of a project, what we did was we proactively put together a concept plan that results in greater conservation of natural resources and more lots in the subdivision. So if you were to take this using standard zoning, you'd see maybe 6 lots that cut across the wetland, and you'd be seeing the wetland area, which is shown in red and green. That would be undeveloped, and there'd be a small buffer around it. But you wouldn't be able to protect any of this high-value upland area. But the way that we worked with the city and looking at this cluster zoning ordinance, we could combine both of them, get 42 acres of conservation land, and get 10 lots instead of 6. So, and another thing is that this conservation development is eligible through the state's wetland banking program for potential revenue for the landowners. So credits through the wetland banking program go for about $50,000 an acre right now. So there's huge potential revenue for the conservation plan, and they're getting greater revenue by getting more lots out of the subdivision.
You said 42 acres?
Yep.
Do all 42 acres have equal value?
They don't. So the red and the green, those are likely eligible for 100% credit. So each acre in those areas will be eligible for about $50,000 an acre. And then the blue, purple, and yellow, those are considered the upland buffer area, and they range from anywhere from 25 to 50% of the credit. So.
What's the acreage for the entire site?
80 acres. I think it's like 77.7, but. So just kind of hitting on some of the benefits of the project. With this plan, we'll hopefully be seeing the district's first wetland bank within the district. Yeah. And this is important because currently, as it stands, all the impacts that aren't being able to be replaced on site are getting replaced outside of the district. So we're seeing a net loss of wetlands in the district through development. This project also maximizes the tax base and conservation goals for the city through increasing the density through this cluster development and through 19.5 more acres of upland being preserved. And this results in the greatest potential economic return for the landowners because you get approximately $50,000 per acre when the land is enrolled in the wetland banking program and a 10-lot subdivision as opposed to a 6-lot subdivision. And some of the other benefits of this project, working on this as a permitting person, is that it really supports really supports our role as wanting to be a partner and kind of carrying the conservation goals of the district beyond regulation. Like, we can add value in the regulatory role by incentivizing programs like this. So hopefully this can be used as a model going forward for development in 6 Mile as it happens. So the next steps, we had met with the Maters on February 2nd to go over this plan, and they had committed to taking this concept plan to the city and to the wetland banking people like Bowser and the Army Corps of Engineers. And we would like to continue to be a partner through that process by being an advisory role to them. And we have full support from our partners, which is outlined in the letters of support from both the city and the Mater Family Trust. And then I just would like to reiterate some of the positives of this. This really was limited resource investment on behalf of the district, and we got a 22-acre wetland restoration, a 42-acre conservation plan, and helped our partners to do it.
That's it?
That's it.
Love it.
Is that all?
Yeah. Just a couple things. I know buried in the comprehensive plan somewhere for the board members that were around when we developed the comprehensive plan, there was always this goal of we want developers to come in early, and we never knew what the mechanism was to do this. And I think that's what Courtney means when she says that this is a good model for, this is a sort of a poster child for encouraging other developers what happens when you come in early. And it was always positioned delicately because we were concerned about requiring people to come in early, because that would be perceived more as a mandate or a regulation. And I know when that happened, a lot of the city said, why would they come see you first? They need their preliminary plat. And so I just, harken back, that was just 2007 when that was adopted, to an example like this that can really show landowners, developers, and the city what happens when we do link up early, and we, the district, we are able to take a broader perspective. And I think one of the things that we did in this case, and one of the things that we're starting to do more of, is recognize that looking at the conservation plan and just putting the conservation plan out there, there's always going to be skepticism and reluctance associated with going that route by the landowner or the city because of the perceived risk of doing that. What does it do to my development plan? And so getting these things in the ground almost requires us to look at the economics and the land use and everything together, because it's just a clear picture that eliminates what the risk is. And this doesn't work everywhere. But if you look at things holistically and you create a clear roadmap, it's fairly obvious, what the best route to go is. And, in the case of this particular study, what we did, we just put together a pro forma, and it was informed by market-based information that was provided by the landowner's real estate advisor. So we're using, their information, our knowledge of the wetland bank to meet all of these multiple goals. And like what Courtney said, I think one of the powerful things to me when we look at limited financial resources, but so many wetlands that we need to restore and the opportunities that are out there, for limited investment, really ideas and a little bit of paper and some meetings, we're able to create a roadmap that this isn't in the ground and it's not done and we want to advance to the next step. But just creating that clear pathway and a plan that somebody else can carry forward, we've hopefully limited the district's financial exposure, but we've created a plan that somebody else can go implement that gets the conservation value for us. And I would juxtapose this against some of the projects that we've tried to do in the past, where we've negotiated the land rights for the wetland and we've gotten into conflict with the city, or we've been pursued as restricting development. And so I had a meeting recently with, this is off topic, but with the city of Victoria to talk about our comprehensive plan, and this is the example we brought with us. And they're under a lot of development pressure, and as Courtney pointed out, we think this is a good model for city of Victoria. And they completely agreed and want to work with us on memorializing this approach so that we can do the same thing with them and the same thing with other people. And I think this is what we're in process of doing with the Stonegate Farms project in Medina. So I just see enormous potential behind this model, and as Courtney mentioned for tonight, really we're just checking in. There's no ask of the board, there's no action required. Unless we hear otherwise, we're going to pursue the next steps of continuing to provide an advisory role to the Family Trust and the city to help them get this through concept plan approval at Planning Commission and get the preliminary concept of the wetland banking approved, which then gives them an preliminary approved plan to market. They can just go out and say, we've already got these concepts approved by the government. Does somebody want to buy this plan and build it? And our pro forma is on, page 6.
Manager Olson?
Okay, I get the part that Wink drew all the lines at the top half of that rectangle. Who drew the lines at the bottom half? How does that platted out?
Well, we worked with sort of a 2-member team, district engineer, and then Tony DeMars from Cross River Consulting. He's got a background working with the district on sort of landscape scale planning, but also conservation subdivision planning for the district and other areas. So we used him to actually meet with us in City Hall and go through the sections of zoning code and figure out what we could do and then draw it up with the banking plan. And it goes both ways. The engineers are involved in the cost estimates for the road and drawing things out. He's reading the code, and he also provided advice on planting plans and the wetland bank, how that's going to be established.
So those are roughly 3-acre lots?
Yep.
Yeah, on average.
Yep.
And that's a Minnetrista code that?
Yeah.
In other words, why isn't that 42 lots?
Why isn't it 42?
Well, yeah, 42 1-acre lots. Why are we looking at 10? Why is that?
Because of minimum lot size requirements in the city of Minnetrista's code. And so if they're allowed to go smaller lots than if they didn't do the wetland restoration and set aside valuable upland, the lots would be bigger and there would be few of them. So they're able to increase density by preserving the key natural resources. But it's based on how the city is zoning this part of their city.
Okay.
And they have a conservation category?
Yeah,
Yep.
conservation subdivision ordinance or cluster subdivision ordinance. But yeah, that's memorialized in their letter too, is they're saying, this meets zoning.
Yeah.
Let's get it in front of concept plan.
Okay, last question. So you're meeting the city's requirements by laying it out that way, taking into consideration all the property, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yet you're still able to sell off the banking value of it to projects anywhere else
That's right.
Yep.
in the area.
We talked about maybe leaving and getting into the development business.
I remember that discussion.
Yeah, I mean,
And you
you
only
wouldn't
charge a 10%
wouldn't ordinarily think that. You'd think, well, if it's a conservation subdivision ordinance, I have to set it aside, and I lost my value.
Right.
But if you know about wetland banking, no, you didn't. And there aren't any banks in the watershed district.
Well, the point you're making is that space doesn't care about water. And what Minnetrista looks at is space. How many acres per house is space? And then we value it as how much water is there as well. And if we combine the two, there's two types of value in a sense. There's acres and then there's water. So.
Well, yeah, there's sort of 3 tiers is the way I look at it, is if they develop straight zoning that have 10 lots at $160,000 a lot, and they'd be running twice as much infrastructure because they'd have a road on the south side and driveways up on the north, and all that costs money.
Yep.
The second tier would be, let's do straight zoning, but a wetland bank where we get $50,000 an acre out of the wetland bank, and there's more money coming in as a landowner. And the third tier is, if you do the wetland bank, plus you add these key conservation areas on the north side, you've got enough massing to set aside 50% of the property, and now I just got 4 more lots. So I get $50,000 an acre plus 4 more lots at $160,000 an acre, in a perfect world or perfect market. So it's going from standard zoning to looking at the wetland bank to doing everything together. I think that's a good way to sell natural resource conservation because it's about bottom dollar.
Thank you, Manager Miller.
It took 3 good partners to bring this about, but your initiative, Courtney, is, I think, probably the most important element here, going outside your regulatory role and seeing the opportunity. But the landowners are really informed folks that have this patience, because the normal reaction of a landowner is, oh, these people are screwing around with me, and oh, why are they putting these regulations up against us? And where I think we have some, and I don't know, I never met them before tonight. I presume they're the folks sitting in the back there.
Yeah.
But that's really commendable that they're willing to work with us, and for that matter, the city too. It's really requires everybody to cooperate and look out of the regular looking glass and look for the greater good. And the greater good happens to have an economic return that's better than would otherwise be available.
Manager Calkins.
I don't need to rehash the many benefits that this brings to all of the partners, including the district, but I did want to reiterate what James said, is that we have struggled for a long time to find a way to get involved in projects much earlier, and this really is a fabulous example of doing that, and it shows what can be done, and it's voluntary. That to me is really the important thing, is that it's a voluntary kind of a thing, and I've heard people say that the district is opposed to development, and as long as I've been on the board, I've never seen that, but you still hear it, and especially with our focus on outcome-based rules and those kinds of things, is that we want to achieve the district's goals, but we're completely open to creative ways to get there. And this is a really great example of that, and it's exciting, and I say get out there and work with them and work with others, and the more we can do this, I think the better off the district will be. So, thank you.
Manager Olson?
I have a quick question to council, maybe, and that is, when you said it's voluntary, is there any tax advantage to doing this with your land? Granted, there's income being produced to the owners of the land, and you've maximized it by doing it this way, but is there any other tax consideration because you went into a resource use of it?
Manager Olson, board members, obviously the caveat is that I'm not the mayor's counsel, and they would have that conversation with them. I'm not sure that that's true in this case. There are certain tax advantages in the way that one can manage one's land. If it's burdened for conservation purposes in a way that reduces the value of the land, then under IRS regulations, they can go through steps and recoup benefits from doing that. In this case, if it's working within the city code, basically, and maximizing the developability of the land consistent with the code, I'm not sure that that would equate in the same way. It's not reducing the value of the land.
We haven't lost anything. Okay, got it.
Well, they've gained some.
Yeah.
They got the revenues off the sale of credits.
Any other
So
discussion?
they'll have to deal with the tax. They'll have to pay the tax rather than get a credit.
Better to have revenue than.
Yeah, right, anytime.
It sounds like there's a concurrence here that we want you to continue to work with this project.
Be happy to.
Thank
So
you very
you're
much.
going to do a white paper and spread it around to the people in the area?
Well, it will be, before we close, I'd be interested to see if, anybody from the Mader family wants to talk to the board, but we've got their blessing to talk about this through the comprehensive plan process, not with any sort of particulars regarding the economics or anything, but just the plan and the concept and the philosophy. And so when we have a comprehensive plan kickoffs, I don't know if a white paper is as eye-catching as a poster, but we're going to have a poster that explains, the philosophy of how we worked through this and what the benefits are. And I really do think it's a good model for some of our other communities that do have this sort of hangover with regards to how they think we perceive land use and development. So hopefully it'll start to be a good story that changes attitudes.
Thank you. Magic Assault?
Well, I think you pretty much just answered it, but the joke about the white paper, but our communications department's put together some very nice brochures that communicate very well benefits of what's going on in the watershed, and I think to Manager Culkin's comment, this could be used as a marketing piece, so to speak, to land owners and developers to foster that coming in early. There's benefits to engaging the watershed district.
Obviously, we want to be respectful of the maters. I mean, these are all public documents. But we're going to work with them on exactly how to do that and how to position it, and how far do we go now versus when it gets a little bit more real and more concrete. So we'll be able to ramp things up as we get, as this becomes more locked in, or if it actually happens. But definitely, that's what we're thinking.
Any other discussion? Thank you very much. Unless, did you wish to speak to the board? Anyone from the family?
Well, I'll speak for myself.
Could you come
Could
forward?
you come to the microphone, sir?
Could you come forward? Yeah.
Oh,
you can sit
yeah.
down.
Yeah. Sit by me.
She doesn't usually let me sit next to her.
And if you start with your name.
Yeah, my name is Jim Mader. I'm one of 7 siblings, and James and Courtney are right. We came and said, we understand we have something, but we have no clue what it is that we have, and they have helped us. And I think the word trust would be the word I would use to describe our relationship with them. They've really helped us a lot, and I'm doing the talking, but there are 3 people back there who could say this better than I can. No, they've been wonderful to work with. It's always been upbeat. Every time it's been nice to work with them. I don't know. What else do you want to hear?
Yeah. I'm so pleased.
Yeah. No, I mean it's been terrific, and yeah, it's been good for us and education for us. One of the brother-in-laws is like really interested in this, and he's getting an education, and anyway, it's been fun, and it's been very nice working with these guys.
We'll see you again, Mr. Mader.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is that a motion?
Thank you very much. The next item for discussion is the AIS ongoing legislation, and maybe get an update on that and talk about what messages we would like to have carried to the legislature, or how we think that might shape up. Brian and Lars know more of this than I do. Do you want to lead off, Brian?
Sure. So there was a hearing on Tuesday that was a deletion of the existing statute that was passed on to, that was held in the House Policy Committee. It was passed out unanimously to the House Environment and Finance Committee. The House Chair and Senate Chair have their own relationship. It's a little complicated. In the Senate, there is going to be a hearing on Tuesday of next week, and there's a bill introduced. We all have an email from Joel Carlson. The bill is introduced. It's in the committee. The senator who's authoring that bill is doing what they call a delete everything amendment. So literally, he takes the text, deletes it all, replaces it with brand new text. So there will be a brand new bill before the committee. They're in the process of drafting it right now. Senate council, the attorney for the full Senate, is working with the senator. He directed council to sit down with the DNR and other interested parties. We were part of our staff, Craig Dawson and Michael Welch. We're in a meeting with the more lobbyists from Frederickson Byron, and they provided feedback to the attorney, who will draft new legislation. The timing for when anybody will submit new legislation will be up to the senator. So there may be we don't know when it will be, but it'll be at the very latest Tuesday at whatever time that hearing is, noon. So the question is ultimately kind of how do we respond? And I can't recall if it was a motion or raise the idea of having Lars kind of pull together appropriate voices representing our perspective to go to the hearing and to provide testimony. And the question is, what do we say? The bill as it currently sits in the committee, which will be changed, currently has a $25 penalty for launching a boat without a decal. People are exempt from the training and decal requirements if they live in a riparian environment, if they're basically lake residents or river creek residents, and their boat is kept in that body. If it doesn't move, it doesn't have to have a decal. They don't have to go through the training process. The $25 civil penalty would be waived until January 1st, 2017. So some of that may be changed, some of it may not be changed in a new bill. It's unclear, again, it's unclear exactly what that bill might be, but they were talking about, the DNR was talking about having programs starting in 2016 with a warning all through 2016, and then enforcement in 2017, still at the $25 civil penalty. They would eliminate $5 for a test and for the education piece. They would enforce on launching of a boat into water, not on the transportation of a boat, or the transit of a boat through on the roads.
That's the old bill?
That's what they're proposing.
Yeah.
So they're proposing to eliminate, exactly.
Yeah, that was the big complaint in the newspaper.
Yep.
Was the transportation examples.
Exactly.
Where nothing was being launched.
Exactly.
New boat manufacturers, people passing through the state, on and on.
Yep. And there was testimony offered that a guy at Gunsmith lost a $12,000 booking at his lodge because Michiganders didn't want to drive their boats into Minnesota for the fear of getting arrested. Which brings up the point of all this. That anecdote of a small businessman who has a lodge losing a $12,000 contract is a powerful anecdote for legislators. And the question is, how do we provide our perspective? I'll say that I had a quick conference call on the way here. Craig was sitting there with Michael and with Andy Pomeroy, and they were talking about what Craig would say. And I'm offering, I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to go. I would suggest that we would send one of our policymakers, one of us. Craig was indicating the talking points of changing the law is better than repealing the law. We need to make whatever program exists work because we need to stop AIS. We want implementation to be accepted, and we want to protect the waters, and the language needs to help people change their behaviors. Language of the statute. I guess I kind of would like to open it up just for discussion. Are those the right talking points? And how should we approach this?
Manager Olson.
Have they defined the training? Is the training something a resort owner can administer is it something that has to be done by DNR? What is it?
So there was a $5 fee to do the training. They have a vendor. They, I don't actually know. I wasn't at the meeting and I've not been engaged at that level. Sounds like no. And they're eliminating, in the governor's budget, his proposal increases something by $5. Basically, he proposes a mechanism to buy out the vendor, and by eliminating the $5 fee, the $5 fee the DNR was going to use to pay for the vendor, and essentially they're playing a shell game so that the $5 fee can go away, the vendor can go away, the DNR will operate the program in-house, and it'll be revenue neutral, or expenditure neutral. So it doesn't sound like they have.
Because when I go up north, I count on the fact that the resort owner can sell me a fishing license, sell me bait.
You just show up and it's a one-stop shop.
Yep.
You know, when I go to the Boundary Waters, you have to watch a video. It's the same thing. You show up, the outfitter does it, or you stop by the National Forest.
Yep. And that, you could add that to your list of concerns, wanting to protect the water bodies, but also wanting to protect the business of the resorter by giving him the authority to do the training.
Manager Casal?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to present it in giving an analogous examples of existing programs that work. They know that those work, if the resort owners know they work, the legislators know they work, fitting into that same program then it's not a burden, it's a more valuable information that can be provided during that already practiced communication, interaction with the traveler, the boat owner, the angler, what have you.
Is part of the issue also that we need to have messages that are adaptable or broad enough because we don't know what that bill is going to look like? We have to have sort of principles as opposed to programmatic ideas? It's a question, not a suggestion. I don't know the answer. Manager Collins.
If I understand what you're saying correctly, I would say yes. I think I was a little bit disappointed in the letter that went to the House committee because it didn't provide the story. It didn't provide any background as to why this is important. I shouldn't say why this. I should say why actions to prevent the spread of AIS is important. And to the watershed district, but really not the watershed district, it's for the citizens of the state. And I think that that's where, from an education standpoint, I think that's where that has to be. It has to be telling people, you know, these are the issues, these are the concerns, and it's kind of like the development thing. The watershed district is not, its goal is not to prevent people from having access to water bodies. Its goal is to prevent those water bodies from being destroyed by AIS. And if that happens, the anglers are damaged by that, the property owners are damaged by that, the resort owners are damaged by that, and so the goal is we should all be working together to achieve the common goals that we have, and that common goal is to prevent the spread of AIS and maintain access to reasonable, I guess you have to put reasonable access to water bodies in there. And we need to make that case better. And I think it can't be aimed at a specific bill until you know what the bill is. Then you can respond to that. But until you have a specific bill, I think that the message has to be broader and hit those key points of this is why this is important and that's why we stand behind this. And I guess the other thing I would add to that is at this point is that, and I've said this before, there doesn't seem to be any urgency And, you know, when I hear, well, now they've delayed this for another year, and in another year, Lake Minnetonka will have hydrilla in it, or something else. And I think that the district also needs to make that point, is that this is an urgent issue, and it can't be pushed off to 2017 or 2019 or whatever it is, because with each recreational season that occurs, the risk is there.
All 28 days or whatever Bill said. Well, and I see your hand up too, but this ties into what Brian was saying about the power of the anecdote. Anecdotes that tell that story would be good too, and wouldn't be Bill specific. Create that sense of urgency. Brian.
I was going to kind of dovetail off of that as well, because, and also make one point, that we were just kind of scrambling. And the idea in terms of how to respond, given that we couldn't really tap Joel, and we were negotiating out with the firm. And so the intent of the letter was acknowledging, internally acknowledging the fact that that bill was going to pass, and also just putting a stake in the sand saying we oppose this, and acknowledging we haven't talked about how to respond and how we should respond. So your point is absolutely right.
And I understand the timing issue. I mean, it always seems like a short time. I don't know why it should be, but this is not new for the district. So to me, the district should have those points, those important points should already exist.
Agreed.
And because this is not new, and we knew it wasn't going away. And when the time came, it was, and it was a letter that said we're opposed to this, but saying you're opposed to something without having the justification of the reasons why you are or why you're in favor of something, to me, if I was a legislator, wouldn't carry as much weight. I guess that's the point. That's why it's not.
Sure.
Manager Casal?
So the hearing is this coming Tuesday, the 17th?
Correct.
So we basically have 2 business days between now and then. Yeah, right.
One day.
One day. We have John Henley, who is a former legislator who's done a lot of work with the legislature.
He won't lobby.
I'm not asking him to lobby. As far as developing the message as to what can be said, I think he might be a really good resource to help craft that on this very short notice.
You know, my sense to that is kind of what Manager Calkins just said. This isn't our first rodeo on this issue.
I'm just talking about writing by committee.
Oh,
the
yeah,
next
yeah,
day.
I agree.
We have all the talking points.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I was thinking of John Henley in the sense that he spends time up at the Whitefish Lane chain, and the Whitefish chain just got zebra mussels last summer or the year before. There are anecdotes out there that have potentially more powerful than one $12,000 group that didn't come. Like, how much is somebody's property value going to drop when they can't send their grandkids into the beach barefooted?
I also believe there's more to the story about $12,000 and getting the deposit back for whatever reason. Because about $25 fine.
Far be it from me to impugn the reputation of a resort owner at the end of the gunflint.
No, I'm not talking about the resort owner. I'm talking about his client who decided to bail for.
There's that. But so the other question is, can any of us make it on Tuesday potentially at noon? And
Manager Olson?
Tuesday's doable. Monday and Wednesday are out.
I think I'm free Tuesday, but my calendar isn't in front of my head.
I'm assuredly not. And maybe the three of you could link into this too. Because, yeah.
Who, we, our former legislative consultant, current one, Joel Carlson, it's got a conflict, and you were delegated the responsibility by the board to come up with a alternative with our council.
Yes, and go ahead, sir.
And I'd like to have a report on that and see what their who you retained and what their counsel has been.
Yep, so there's a law firm, Frederickson and Byron. They, former GOP legislator, kind of blanking his name all of a sudden. Sorry? Kevin Goodnow. Started up a government relations shop. And Melissa Ron and Andy Pomeroy are the two people who are assigned to this, and they are our lead contacts. Goodnow left the legislature to be the commissioner of DHS, has a whole series of relationships within the GOP leadership in both bodies. Melissa Ron was the executive assistant to Speaker Anderson Kelleher. Andy Pomeroy was one of the lead partisan staff on the Lessard Sam's Council, the Outdoor Heritage stuff. So he is very aware of the environmental dynamics that go on at the Capitol. She is kind of hardwired into a lot of the relationships on the DFL side. They've reached out to the environmental staff in the governor's office. The person who normally does that is out she had neck surgery a week and a half ago. So she's out for another week. The woman who came from the DNR actually came from Bowser. Lewis has a really close relationship with her. She is temporarily posted to the governor's office and told Melissa, why don't you hold off until Molly is back, which will be another week. So in the process of setting up a meeting with the governor's office to try to do something here. Andy facilitated this meeting today with the DNR and Senate and SaxHog's staff, essentially. And that's where we're at. And the other piece is this: in the process, we just signed or Lewis just signed the contract today with Frederickson Byron.
So our general counsel's got a subcontract with this. Okay.
Exactly, and because we authorized Lewis and me to find something to execute. So they've been working essentially on retainer for the last week, and that's what has happened. We interviewed two firms based on the recommendation of some folks Lewis talked to and Joel as well. That's how we stumbled upon this firm.
And we also talked about other people who might speak, and we talked about the Lake Owners Association or some of the environmental groups that are in our sphere.
And if you think about our narrative, I mean, we're policymakers, and we've been trying to structure an appropriate response to protect the resource. This idea of a lakeshore owner whose property values may decrease, or a private businessman like Gabe, who is going to have to incur a whole series of costs, or whose revenue may drop precipitously if people just don't want to boat, or of Joe Schneider, who is trying to figure out how he can kind of deal with his lake association. There are anecdotes that would bolster the idea of implementing something that's robust and protects access as well as the resource. And I think if we can craft that narrative, and we have four opportunities to testify. One is in the House Policy Committee. We just did that with a letter. Next one will be in the House Finance Committee. That has yet to be scheduled. Next week is in the Senate Policy Committee, and then there will be the Senate Finance Committee. And so, and in each stage there'll be overlap of faces, but different faces. And I would argue that the key piece is these anecdotes are useful in floor debates. And if we can identify the right people to make the arguments, I think it would behoove us to do that.
So, Manager Colvitz?
It's kind of already been done, but I forgot to say last time too that there are some problems with the existing law. And they're trying to fix those now. So I think that it's also important for the district, for those things that the district agrees with that are important changes, that we should point that out too. And we should say, we agree with this because I think the western states are different. They stop everybody at the border. But I understand why that is, because they don't have all of the lakes that we do. That's not something that's feasible really in Minnesota. So I think that, we need to point that out and say, we think that this is a reasonable change to the law, because again, we're not out there to prevent, to cause problems for people. So I think we have to be trying to be on the positive side as well and support a better bill. That still has teeth and achieves the goals that we would like to see happen.
I know that the last paragraph of the letter was an attempt to get to that point. I think folks understand that a bit, that we're not trying to, I think they understand that we're trying to be productive.
What do you want? Do you need anything from,
I
you can still.
I saw three hands go up in terms of potentially being able to be there. I don't know that we need to have 3 people, but I think it'd be good to put some heads together and think about how to argue. I mean,
we're not leading the effort. So whoever's leading the effort, if they feel that board members can help them, great. And I would say the same thing of you mentioned other people. I think that the people you mentioned are certainly people who are qualified to speak to those issues.
I think that at this point there doesn't seem to be, there isn't an organized effort beyond the group who wants to remove the statute. Our folks sat down with, I'm blanking on the name of the organization now, with one other water organization, and they're the most organized, but yet they don't necessarily represent our perspective. And I would argue that we're a little unique as a water organization its founding principle is not to protect private interests. Like, we're here to protect public interests, and that's a different perspective.
So has the district sat down, and can the district sit down, and are they willing to sit down with the resort group and say, these are the goals, and we think that these are mutual goals, do you agree with that? And the best thing we could do is have them on the team.
So Joel sent over, Commerce Minnesota Resorts sent out a series of talking points. I just at a quick glance, I would say there's an overlap. I only did a quick glance. I would presume that we would probably be more aggressive than they would be in terms of enforcement, but that's a presumption not based on anything in fact. It's kind of happening in this meeting with the DNR with the other group there was an exchange, and there was an agreement on the front end. We would like to move in this direction, but we probably don't need to talk about that right now because we know DNR has indicated they're not interested in moving in that direction. So, I would suggest that maybe the 3 of you sit down and brainstorm who would be good to pitch a certain perspective. I mean, you live on the creek. Your backyard, in theory, may have zebra mussels very quickly.
It does. The creek is infested.
I know. But
they're all dead now.
But that's a real. I mean, that's a real issue. Like it's a real human issue, and I think that it's the human stories which matter. Like your stories will be different from your stories, will be different from your stories, and they would bolster kind of the policy direction we've taken, which is very different from what the DNR's done.
You're a boater, aren't you?
Absolutely.
My AAS story, my zero muscle story is at the end of the year last summer, our granddaughter was swimming and found some milfoil twisted around a dock pipe and picked it up and started picking up all the zero muscle. And I'd known they were across the bay, but that was the first time I'd seen them on my shore. So next summer she'll be wearing aqua socks when she comes to my house. And I'll tell her not to grab armfuls of zero muscle because it might scratch her. Milfoil.
The good news is you have a shallow beach, and the ice killed everything right now. It's dead your property.
Yep.
So they'll all be starting all over again.
That's true. And they'll float in again.
Does that mean the shells are still there from last year?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, cut your feet.
Except the one she took out.
But I mean, but that gets to the point, like, they may be dead, but they're still a nuisance and a problem.
Well, if we could have the administrator work with the lobbyist and pull this together and knowing that the three of us are potentially willing and able, we can certainly get that moving.
Boy, this sounds like a complicated coordinating. You got a message, you got people, you got, you know, I don't know. Do you have time to pull this together?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
And of course, Craig Dawson, I didn't say Craig Dawson, but obviously Craig would be integral to this, yeah.
Okay.
Is anybody connected with Schneider?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not since the early part of this week. But yeah.
How about Gabe?
You know, I talked to him at the beginning, and I think he was more interested in what was happening in Wayzata.
Okay.
But he was open to talking about it. And he knew about the legislation. He knew that things were happening. He was at the hearing on Monday or on Tuesday.
So I don't think we need an official action. It's just we'll carry forward, incorporate some of these thoughts. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. The last agenda item is the administrator's report. Mr. Erdahl.
I don't really have much of a report. My main report is to thank the staff because today's my 4th day, and the staff has been incredibly helpful and welcoming, and I've had a ton to learn already and look forward to learning in the coming months. It's one of those things where I think there's no shortcut to the process, so I can't jump forward 6 months and know what I would know then tomorrow. So I'm taking it all in and trying to process as quickly as I can. And also to Jeff Sparts, who's in the transition period for me this past week, and I think in terms of trying to figure out some of these legislative processes and the strategic aspect of that so that we can get ahead of it and being more proactive instead of reactive. And that's kind of what you were saying, Manager Calkins and others, that it's we need to get out in front of those things, and we will do that.
Thank you. No other business before the board. We will adjourn.